the pilot test. And so the way that things that are written into permits, the way those are modified is through a consent order. A consent order is the vehicle that the Maryland Department of the Environment uses to adjust dates and other things that are in permits. Consent orders typically, you know, they have a negative connotation attached with them, because normally they are used when, you know, bad things happen. But that's not always true. There can be circumstances where you know, a consent order is put in place in order to provide somebody some regulatory relief, in order to make an improvement or something. So I guess the point of that is consent orders are not always necessarily bad things. So given the fact that the permit has the deadlines, and given the fact that we're not going to meet those deadlines because of the requirement to do the pilot test, and we recognize that, and MDE recognizes that, we are currently, and have been for the last year or so, negotiating with MDE to enter into a consent order that would adjust those deadlines. And in that column entitled Proposed Consent Order, you can see two dates. That the first one of which is entitled ENR Limits in Effect with Reduced Stipulated Penalties on January 1st of 2017. And then the second one is ENR Limits in Full Effect on July 1st of 2017. The impact on the project schedule is such that we do not think we're going to be able to finish the design and put this thing out to contracting and award a contract and have it built until, if you look to the column to the right, current project schedule, until May of 2016. But we also believe that we need a full year to commission the plant and shake the bugs out and be prepared to fully meet those ENR limits. And my experts, those who've been in the wastewater treatment business for decades, tell me that the most critical period is over the winter, that's the worst case scenario for a wastewater treatment plant, is in the winter time with the cold, and that it's they believe, and I believe them, that it's absolutely critical that we be able to operate this plant in this, you know, test mode or startup mode through a winter. And so that's why if we think we're going to finish construction in May of 2016, you know, we believe we need at least a year to, let's say, May of 2017 in order to be able to operate this new plant in the startup mode and shake the bugs out before we're, you know, subject to the full standards and full suite of penalties that can come if you don't meet the standard. Now, the Maryland Department of the Environment's position has been that the ENR standards have to go into effect no later than January 1st of 2017. We have come back to them and said that we don't think it's fair that you hold the county or expect the county to meet those standards on January 1st of 2017 because we need a year to operate this plant in the startup mode. The fact that this January 1st of 2017 appears, from what we've seen so far, to be a hard date in the mind of the Maryland Department of the Environment. That they have insisted that that's when the standards have to go into effect. But we have pointed out that the reason we're bumping up against this 2017 magic date is the fact that we had to spend 18 months previously doing this pilot test to satisfy you, MDE, and so we don't think it's fair that we not get to operate the plant through a winter. And this is where we have been going back and forth with MDE. They appear to have accepted that this concept that we shouldn't be subject to the full standard and the full suite of penalties until we've had a chance to operate this thing for a year, including through a winter, to shake out any bugs. And so that's where that July 1st of 2017 date comes from. Now, they've been insistent that the standards go into effect on January 1st of 2017. We have said, well, okay, if those standards need to go into effect, that's fine, but we should not be subjected to the full suite of penalties, monetary fines that we could be subjected to if we don't meet discharge permits. And so what we have proposed back to them is that any penalties between January 1st and June 30th be nominal in nature. That allows you, MDE, to say, and it will be true, to say, yes, the ENR standards are in effect. But it would also, in my opinion, satisfy the county's need not to be the ones bearing all that risk, because we don't feel like we're the ones responsible for the fact that we're bumping up against this 2017 magic date. And so where we're at right now with MDE is trying to come to an agreement on what constitutes a nominal penalty. And we might be there, we thought we were there, and we didn't think we were there, but now we think maybe we're back there. But we've got some math to do to try to figure out, under MDE's latest proposal, what's the maximum amount the county could face per month in terms of monetary penalties. And then we'll ask ourselves, is that acceptable or not acceptable? And if it's not, then we're going to have to go back for a few more rounds with MDE. We're currently doing the math and trying to figure that out. So right now, the date of January 1st of 2017 is a hard date in the mind of our regulator, the Maryland Department of the Environment. And so that's the date that we are aiming to hit. And so we've backward planned off that, and that's where you get these other milestones. So in other words, under the current project schedule column. So for example, in order to be finished with construction in May of 2016, we need to finish contractor pre-qualification, we need to open bids, we need to award a contract, and so on. And that's what the rest of these milestones are. So our current project schedule, which again is driven by this January 1st, 2017 deadline, is we intend to be finished with the contractor pre-qualification process by March 6th. That is underway, so you may have seen it, a legal notice that ran in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. It ran in the Baltimore Sun. It's hanging on the county website, a couple other electronic portals, because we have concluded that it is best and necessary to pre-qualify contractors. This is a tool that we use occasionally on very large, complex, unique type projects. We don't use contractor pre-qualification on every project. We don't use it on many projects. We use it selectively on a few projects. The last one that we did was the Cell4 redevelopment project at the landfill, and to my dying day, I will believe that the fact that we used contractor pre-qualification on that project was the single largest factor responsible for the successful completion of that project. And I believe, and my team believes, that it is absolutely critical to pre-qualify contractors for this project as well. From our perspective, this is a no-fail mission, and we don't want our plant to be the first wastewater treatment plant that some contractor builds. So what this process will do is it's intended to create a pool of contractors who have met certain minimum qualifications, who will then be asked to submit a bid on this project. So the schedule calls for the pre-qualification to be done on March 6th, and then a couple weeks later, on March 19th, is when we would notify those contractors that they have been pre-qualified and ask them to then prepare their bids. And item number 3, the milestone is open the bids. That's when the bids from those pre-qualified contractors would be due, is on May 24th of 2013. And then, there's some review and some other processing that occurs. And so the schedule calls for the county to award that construction contract on June 26th of 2013. Now, because state money is being used to help pay for this project, as everybody knows, with state money comes state strings, and one of the things that has to be done is that we have to send forward our contract award package to the Maryland Department of the Environment for them to review and approve. And so that is item number 5, MDE approves construction contract award, and that's a multi-month process. The current schedule anticipates that that would be complete by October 28th of 2013. And once MDE has approved the proposed contractor and the terms of the contract, etc., the county would then move to issue notice to proceed. There is some more paperwork that needs to be done, bonds, execute the contract, etc. So we anticipate that that would take until December 10th of 2013. And then it's up to the construction contractor to go and build this project, and we anticipate that that would be complete. This is item number 7, substantial completion of construction by May 18th of 2016. That's about a 28-month construction duration, which, this is a 30 to 30, we're anticipating the value of the construction contract to be in the $30 to $35 million range. But it's not like we're building a brand new plant on a greenfield site. This is upgrading an existing wastewater treatment plant that has to remain in operation during the course of construction. So it's going to be an exceptionally challenging project that will, require the best efforts of all concerned in order to make it a success. So I guess I offer that because somebody might think, wow, 28 months, that's a long project duration, but we've looked at it, and given the magnitude and the complexity involved, we think that's about what it's going to take. So then, upon substantial completion in May of 2016, that's when we then move into this startup and commissioning phase in order to work the bugs out and ensure that the plant is capable of meeting the ENR treatment standards. And so you've already heard me talk about the state's position about the effective date. So that's item number 8, ENR limits in effect with reduced stipulated penalties on January 1st of 2017. And then we believe that by the end of June, we will have had the plant in operation for over a year, that should have been more than enough time to work out any issues, and we are confident that we will be in a position to comply with all the ENR discharge standards come July 1st of 2017. So I guess I offer that to you as background so that you understand, you know, what's driving this thing, and, you know, where do these dates come from that you may have heard about. I think at this point in time I'll pause and, you know, give you an opportunity to ask any questions. As you know, I could ramble on all day, but I want to make sure that we are answering your questions and concerns, and I'll draw on my team as needed.
May I ask a number of questions, please? Number one is, what is this pilot test, and what does this pilot test test, and what does this pilot test prove? Then thirdly, has a pilot test ever been done anywhere other than, is a pilot test ever been done in Maryland? And you can answer those questions, and I'll follow up with some others.
Okay. The pilot test is completed.
But first, what is the pilot test?
The pilot test was intended to determine, could the plant meet ENR standards anyway without doing a multi-million-dollar upgrade. I would call that MDE doing due diligence, because, you know, if the plant could meet those standards, then, you know, it wouldn't, why spend money upgrading it? You know, so I think that they, in their mind, it was a valid question that should be asked. I think we were pretty confident we knew the answer, but MDE wanted to see it for themselves. So I would call that due diligence. Now, at some point in the not too distant future, I hope to host a tour for any council members who would be interested, so that you could come out and see for yourself what I'm going to try to describe in words. But at the Seneca Point wastewater treatment plant, there are two treatment trains or processes that are kind of in parallel. The permitted capacity of the plant is 2 million gallons per day, but the actual flows are about 1 million gallons per day, and so each of these two parallel processes are currently running at about 50% capacity. The question was, is the plant going to be able to meet ENR treatment standards when it's flowing at full capacity, 2 million gallons per day? And so the way we did this was to shut down one of the two treatment trains, shift all of the flow to the other one, and run that one at 100% capacity, simulating what it would be faced with if the total plant flows were in fact 2 million gallons per day. And so we shifted it over, and then we ran it that way for a number of months, including over the winter, and took measurements, as we do routinely, took measurements to see what was coming out the end of the pipe, and is it meeting ENR standards or not. And as the operators expected, the answer was no, that the pilot test showed that the plant was not capable of meeting ENR standards in its current configuration, and therefore an upgrade would be needed. Jeff, how did I do? Do you want to add anything to that? You were the man on the ground for the pilot test.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything I need to add to it. No, that you described it pretty accurately.
I guess my question is really, is this a one-of-a-type sewage treatment facility, or is there comparable other treatment facilities somewhere in this world that can be used as a model? by which we could forego having to do these expensive and time-consuming tests?
The current wastewater, the Center Point as it exists today is not a unique, one-of-a-kind wastewater treatment plant, nor is what we're proposing to build a unique, one-of-a-kind wastewater treatment plant. I suppose the answer to that probably is that even though the process is the same and other plants, every plant is unique in terms of its hydraulics, and so that's what I expect MDE would say as to why they couldn't just look somewhere else, that they felt it necessary for us to actually conduct the actual pilot test on the ground physically at Seneca Point.
Director Flanagan, isn't one of the big issues though, well, let me back up. The contractor pre-qualification process assumes a membrane bioreactor system, correct?
Yes, I believe that's one of the criteria that's included in there, is that we are looking for contractors who have experience with that type of a plant.
And didn't MDE say that they were very concerned with the amount of cost, and that they would only help fund a quarter of the cost, and that they believed, which has helped slow the process down, that there are other alternatives that we could be upgrading our sewage treatment plant with, that are much cheaper, that would meet the standard that is necessary in January 1st, 2017.
There are other methods of treatment besides membrane bioreactor that can treat and achieve ENR standards. What the reason or the decision to change technologies from the current method of treatment to the membrane bioreactor method of treatment was made multiple years ago. I'm going to say back 3 to 4 years ago, and you're correct that this project does more than just upgrade the plant to meet ENR. It's changing technology from the current technology to the membrane bioreactor technology, and the rationale for doing that is that we believe it will treat the effluent better, but again, it's not the only way to achieve ENR, but that we believe it will allow the county to meet its treatment requirements for the service area within that current footprint. In other words, if we stayed with the current technology, there would be, it could, on that site, it could only be expanded so much. And then when the flows get to that point, and this is a function of how much real estate, how much space it takes to physically treat wastewater using certain technologies, that there would be a limit reached, at which point in time the county would then have to go and find a site for a new wastewater treatment plant, achieve a new discharge permit, purchase that site, and build a brand new wastewater treatment plant, which some of you have heard me say would only be slightly less fun than trying to site a new landfill. And so the decision was made to switch technologies so that the county could meet its wastewater treatment needs within that portion of the county served by the Seneca Point plant within that current footprint. And so never have to go site a new wastewater treatment plant. There would be economies of scale achieved with that. And membrane bioreactor technology also treats, again, to a very high standard, which would support effluent reuse at some point if we find opportunities for that. So there were a multitude of reasons that went into the decision to change technologies at this point, that it seemed to all concerned that before the county went and spent lots of money going down this path, that if we were going to make this shift, that now was the time to do it. And so in my mind, what this project is doing is setting the county up for success going forward with regard to wastewater treatment. That we are switching the technology, and a good portion of what is being done as part of this project will lay the foundation for future expansions when the time comes. So the future expansions will be much easier and much cheaper than they would be if we did not make this switch now.
I thought it was an interesting point that Mr. McCarthy had brought up, asking if our system was unique, and you confirmed that it was not. I would be interested to see what other alternatives are out there for the treatment plant to meet the ENR standards, and something that we can do at a later date to address the footprint issue as you described. Maybe we could split that apart and just make the changes necessary to upgrade to meet the current situation that MDE is mandated from us. The $40 million cost is huge, and we have Meadowview and Cherry Hill we'll have to be looking at. How close are they to the 500,000 threshold?
The Meadowview wastewater treatment plant, as you might recall, is not in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. That's outside of, it discharges into the Christiana River watershed. There is an upper limit. Would not be able to put unlimited amounts of wastewater through that plant, but it doesn't have the same restrictions, that's a good word, thank you, as do wastewater treatment plants within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Now, we have started work on a master plan at Meadowview to see, what would its upper limit be? Is it large? Is the footprint currently large enough to accommodate that? Or, what's the future of Meadowview? So we're starting to take a look at that. But, that plant was replaced back in the early to mid 2000 timeframe. So it's relatively new and, has a long time to go. And any need to expand that, will be driven by flows and demand. As far as Cherry Hill goes, that plant is operating at less than 50% of its capacity. It has a lot of capacity remaining. It too was replaced back in the 2002 timeframe. In fact, I think that's the third generation treatment plant on that site. So there's nothing imminent at Cherry Hill, and I believe that in our wastewater CIP we have pushed that to the right. In other words, that's in the out years, and the intent is, I think you might remember from previous discussions on this topic, is that when we reach a trigger point at Cherry Hill, and that could come in several different ways, but when we get to that trigger point, we think the best thing to do is to push that sewage up to Meadowview. In other words, not expand Cherry Hill, not replace Cherry Hill, but to convert it to a pump station and then lay some pipe that will push that sewage up to the Meadowview wastewater treatment plant to take advantage of available capacity up there, and also earn nutrient credits that will come from pushing nutrients out of the Bay watershed into another watershed that is in a better position to receive them. I guess the point being, I don't think we're gonna need to spend a lot of money at Meadowview or Cherry Hill in the near future, that those requirements are more in the out years.
But we do know that there is, work that needs to be done on other treatment plants. 40 million is still a very high cost, and if we have other options, I think, I would like to hear what they are. The qualifications of a contractor, I would hope, I agree with the pre-qualification process, but I would like to see if someone has, if a bid has come in under, it's a low bid, I'd like to have documented as to why they didn't pass the pre-qualification process.
The process that we are using is such that the only bids that will be solicited will be from those contractors who have been pre-qualified. In other words, the bids are only going to be solicited from those contractors who have been, who have met the experience and other criteria that renders them pre-qualified.
So you're going to them and saying, we would like a bid, is that correct?
Yes.
How many contractors do you anticipate you'll be offering the opportunity to bid?
We don't know that for sure. We are in the early phases of the contractor pre-qualification process, and so we don't know how many are going to submit statements of qualification. We don't know how many will be deemed qualified. I think, you know, we will see how many we get at the end of the process and have to make a determination whether we think that that pool is sufficient. If only one contractor emerges from the pre-qualification process as being qualified, I would say, you know, that's not adequate. We would not want just one pre-qualified bidder. You know, whether we feel we need 3 or 5 or 12, we don't have any, you know, set number, but we're going to see how many emerge from the process and make a judgment call as to whether or not we believe that represents an adequate pool of bidders, so as to, you know, give us a sufficient level of competition.
Director Flanagan, is there, there is an opportunity for contractors to request to go through the pre-qualification process, correct?
Yes, as I
Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, as I tried to explain earlier, we are taking a I'm going to call it a multi-pronged approach to bring this project to the attention of that portion of the contractor community that is qualified to do this type of work. We are, you know, as I mentioned, we're running a legal notice in the newspaper of general circulation, but you know, that has only a limited sphere of influence. And so we are attempting to cast a much wider net. We've advertised in the Baltimore Sun. The project is on the county website. It's on the eMaryland Marketplace, which is an electronic procurement system operated by the state of Maryland. In addition, we have sought to put this on a number of, I call them electronic portals, one of which, and perhaps you might have heard of it, Dodge Reports, which is, you know, probably the preeminent one in the industry, which is a place where contractors who want to find work, bid on projects, you know, go to get project leads. They're not the only one. There's another one called the American Water Intelligencer, which you know, has a more narrow focus. They apparently just focus on water and wastewater type projects. And also our construction manager and I believe our consulting engineer have also contacted contractors that they have worked with in the past successfully to alert them to the fact that the county is going through this pre-qualification process. So we're trying to beat the drum loudly and widely in order to generate sufficient contractor interest so that at the end of the pre-qualification process, we've got an adequate number of bidders.
So are we, at this point, locked into the MBR process?
I guess I think that depends on how much time and money the county's willing to spend to, you know, back the truck up and go down a different path. In my mind, this decision was made years ago, and that would have been the time to go in a different direction. For example, we've been doing this design work on the basis of this membrane bioreactor for the last 2+ years. So we have spent a lot of money, probably in the millions of dollars, on design work based on this MBR.
Was there a vote taken, or was that just how?
The scope of work of this project, it's the wastewater CIP process, is the process by which the scope and budget for this project is vetted and approved previously, you know, by the Board of County Commissioners. Now, if the county, county exec and/or council decides not to move forward with this project as it is currently configured, then essentially what that is going to do is throw in the trash can a couple of years worth of work and a couple $1 million worth of design effort and start from the beginning. And there's no way that's going to happen, probably even by the 2017. What I expect is, and that's why I felt the need to have the column here called current discharge permit, is that, you know, right now, the county's on the hook to be done with constructing the ENR upgrade by March 31st of 2014. And I fully expect that if we do not enter into a consent order with NDE to adjust the dates, if the county basically says, you know, we're not doing this, or we don't like the current plan, we want to back up and start over again, my expectation is that NDE would then move to enforce the terms of the discharge permit, which says construction has to be finished by March 31st of 2014. And so the county would then likely find itself where at least one of the municipalities in the county is faced with, you know, legal action, probable monetary penalties, and a consent order that is then going to establish a new target date by which the project must be completed. So anything's possible, given enough time and money to decide that we don't like the current plan and we want to go in a different direction would constitute a significant disruption that, you know, would have serious ramifications in terms of the need to restart, redo design, and face probable MDE regulatory enforcement action.
Well, I just have a serious concern that this decision, as you said, has been made 2 years ago, and that there was really no official vote, I don't believe, on going in the direction of the MBR process. And this is a significant cost. It's going to cost the taxpayers. We'll be having to probably take out a long-term bond. I know that you've requested the increase of rates hookup rates to help fund this. I think Mr. McCarthy's right, we should have looked at other systems and what have they done to upgrade, what were the options. And 2 years ago, we were first elected. I couldn't tell you when this was brought to us and presented in the manner in which you're describing now.
I guess I don't think it's accurate to say that this scope of this project was not brought to the attention of previous boards of county commissioners. The wastewater CIP is reviewed and approved every year by the Board of County Commissioners. So the scope of this project has been presented to the board, presented and approved by the board every year. Whether the board knew what it was approving or not, I don't know. I can't help you with that. I guess the second thing I would like to point out is that I'd have to go back and look at the dates, but a previous Board of County Commissioners, it might have been the previous Board of County Commissioners, approved award of a contract to actually purchase the membrane bioreactor systems. That had a value of several $1 million. That we went through a separate solicitation process for that because there are a couple different makers of these MBR systems, and in order to be able to complete the design of the project, we needed to pick which one was going to be included. And so the Board of County Commissioners approved award of a construction contract. Now, these things haven't been delivered yet, but the Board of County Commissioners, let me back up and finish that thought. So it was necessary to pick the make and model of the MBR system that was going to be installed as part of this project. And so we went through the normal process, which was advertise and then bring that contract to the Board of County Commissioners for contract award. So if it might have been the previous Board of County Commissioners approved a contract to purchase this MBR system. So that's why, somebody can say, I don't remember, or I didn't know what I was voting on, but nobody can say that this thing wasn't brought before a board and plopped down right in front of you, and the board approved it.
Do any of the other council members have any questions regarding this matter?
I do.
Go ahead.
I have a number of questions. Would it be best to ask you all the questions at once and take one at a time, or you answer one and I give you another question?
Personally, I think I prefer the one at a time. That way I will be sure to address them and not skip over them.
Okay, number one, is it fair for me to assume that what you're doing, this retrofitting of this plant, is just going from basically an obsolete or a less efficient technology to a newer, better technology?
It's not obsolete, and so that's not proper to use that. But is MBR newer and better? Absolutely. And I had, tried to explain part of the reason why we believe that, which is that it cleans the effluent to a higher standard, makes it more suitable for effluent reuse, requires less space, would allow us to meet the projected demand within the current footprint, etc.
Okay. That being said, can this new technology, this membrane technology, can it be added to increase capacity relatively easy?
Absolutely. In fact, I believe that's another one of the advantages of this. It's I've heard it described as kind of a cartridge-like system, so that what this project will do is lay the foundation, do a lot of the basic heavy lifting, such that when it does come time to expand this capacity of the Seneca Point plant, it will be relatively easy and relatively inexpensive, because most of the foundational type work will have already been done. And so the incremental cost to expand it in the future will be less.
Okay.
I guess, I'm sorry, Councilman, I get the way in my view, what this project does, and we fully acknowledge 40 million, that's a big scary number. It's probably the largest capital project in the county's history. But as we look at it, the future of development in Cecil County is on sewer. The future is not on septic systems. We all know that from previous discussions. And in my view, at least, what this project is going to do is set the county up for success going forward in the area of wastewater treatment. That yes, it's, I would say it's an example of strategic thinking. It's trying to look beyond the next rate increase and ask, what's best going to serve this county in the next 10 to 20 year period. And the staff concluded that the switch to MBR was the answer. And that was presented to the Board of County Commissioners, which again has approved it multiple times through the CIP process.
Okay, let me just make one statement. I'm not basically questioning the technology, I just need this for my own information. Now, here's the most difficult of the questions. At the current growth projections for this county, how long do you think that this plant would have a functional life?
Current growth projections.
When you say this plant, do you mean the current?
That the plant, the Northeast River Advanced Water Treatment Plant, would this add, let's say, maybe 20 years of useful life to, would it last that long?
Yes. But if you're asking me at what point in time are we going to need to expand the capacity, that's an educated guess. I guess I will say that 3 or 4, probably 4 years ago now, we believed we were going to run out of treatment plant capacity at Seneca Point faster than we were going to be able to build a capacity expansion. That the demand, in other words, developments that were in the development pipeline in terms of commercial and residential, if you added up how much sewage was going to be generated from that, it exceeded the 1 million gallons in remaining capacity. And so we essentially looked at each other and said, holy crap, we're going to run out of wastewater treatment plant capacity before we can expand this thing, and then the county's going to have to issue a sewer moratorium, which essentially would be a closed for business sign out there on Route 40, which we said would not be a good thing. And so we then that was the genesis for the project. At one time, it was expand the capacity and upgrade the treatment, but then everything happened that happened. The demand slacked off, and we separated those out. So this project is only to upgrade it. It won't result in an increase in the permitted capacity, but as I've been trying to convey, it will lay the foundation for a future capacity expansion that, the timing of which will depend on the market. I think our, planning right now is that it's certainly not within the 5-year window of the CIP, and it's probably more out in the 10-year, a decade time frame. But that can change pretty quickly, as we all know.
So Director Flanagan, if we go with the MBR system, we don't have an opportunity now to do something to meet the standards imposed on us by MDE. We don't have another alternative to meet those standards and introduce the MBR later. If we do the MBR, we have to do it now. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, but it would require basically throwing out all the design work that's been done to this point and then designing another project that would upgrade the treatment system using the current, technology.
Okay, so that would be backing the truck up, as you say,
Well, no, that's how I would characterize it.
Well,
Right.
options, as you say, options are good. I'd like to know if there are any, that it's a lesser cost, for us to have to bear at this time. Just, what technologies are available, how much would have to be invested? I'd just like to know that.
Well, I think the answer is that it would require construction of this thing called a denitrification filter that would be, I don't know, tacked on or added on to the current treatment system. But that's not what's designed. And so if the county decides that it doesn't like the MBR, and I realize I'm saying this for at least the second time, but I want to make sure everybody understands it, that if the county decides it doesn't want to switch technologies to MBR now, that is essentially
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, is there a way for us to meet what MDE is imposing on us now? And not just to meet those standards, and we can go with the MBR later. We can put that project in later.
Well, the answer is yes, but it doesn't seem wise to me to go and spend money building something that if you later decide we want to switch to MBR would essentially be, wasted effort or lost money.
Well, that's the information I'm asking from you. Tell me how much it would cost, how much of an investment, just information I'd like to have.
Councilman Dunn, do you have any additional questions?
No.
Councilman Baldry, do you have any questions? Director Flanagan, I do have a question. We've been talking about the round numbers of this total project to be about 40 million. And how are you going to fund that project? Or you have financial people here, whoever you want to answer that question. What's the plan?
Well, as you know, we the staff had previously submitted recommended rate increases to sewer user rates and connection fees to the Board of County Commissioners, and this project was included in the rate study that yielded those numbers. And the board did implement some increases in rates and fees, but not the full increases that were recommended by the rate study. It is my understanding that well, it's a fact, it's not understanding. We are in the process of updating that rate study in order to ensure that it contains the most current data with regard to estimated construction costs and projected number of new users and all the other elements that go into a rate study, and that we anticipate forwarding to the council as part of the budget process the recommended revisions in rates and fees. I almost said increases because it's going to have to be increases. That's not going to be a secret. But a big part of that is going to be the cost allocation. In other words, deciding who is going to bear the cost of this and the other projects. And the previous rate study split the cost of this upgrade project between current sewer users and new sewer users. Current sewer users pay in the form of sewer user rates, and new users pay in the form of connection fees. And so that cost allocation is what caused the connection fee recommendation to be this much, but the Board of County Commissioners balked at raising it that much. So we're going to have to go back and reconsider the cost allocation. In other words, what group is going to bear what percentage of the cost? That's part of the rate study, which is, it's underway. And then at some point in time, that will be presented to the county council for your consideration.
I appreciate that you're going back to update the rate study. My biggest concern before, the previous rate study assumed Artesian would be taking over the plants, and therefore there was, we would only have retained, was it 2/3 of the users?
I think it was approximately.
Okay.
I was gonna say 60%, but that's pretty close to
So
67.
That's a big difference in doing the math and how you're gonna split it. So I appreciate that you're going back and using the updated information.
Do you know when you'll be back to the council with projected and proposed rate increases?
It's proposed to be a part of the budget process. We're expecting that, it'll take the consultant 4 weeks to do the work. We just provided them, Craig and Winston just provided them the data that they need to move forward, on Friday. So we're 4 weeks out from, getting their draft to us.
So the council will be looking at the operating budget, the capital budget, and rate increases for wastewater.
Yes, that's the plan. I think, solid waste,
Yeah, I was gonna say, something else to look forward to. We're also in the process of doing a landfill tipping fee analysis, and that will be coming forward as part of the budget process also.
Well, thank you for coming today and reporting this. I would suggest that you've done a really good job in the past of putting like the white paper together, a short position paper on the benefits of why we're moving forward with this. And one of the things I see is the scalability of the new technology versus the old technology, and why we're making that investment today, so that we can scale it up into the future for the long haul, the long run. I know that it's difficult for us to go along with this, but I see some benefits, but I also see a significant cost that we're going to have to burden the users that are connected currently without any significant growth. In any event, I would encourage you to put a position paper together, because there will be a lot of citizens questioning the council and why are you raising the rate so high. And I think that we need some support in writing to help us justify it.
And
Yeah,
Director
one-
Flanagan, I'm sorry, Director Flanagan, I have received concerns about why are we going to the Cadillac of treatment plants, other alternatives, what other alternatives are available. And I would request that you forward that information to me on what are the costs of meeting the standards from MDE. What alternatives do we have, and maybe implementing the MBR system at a later date.
That concludes the open session of our agenda today, and we will be going into closed session.
Excuse me, I think Councilman McCarthy has something to say.
This is a tangential question. Sewage sludge, what do you do with it? Do you send it to Baltimore, Washington DC?
No, we send it to the Cecil County Central Landfill.
Okay.
The sewage sludge in this application is not coming from any Cecil County operated wastewater treatment plants at the present time. We landfill our sewage sludge.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Vicki, you want to read the provision for closed session?
Council members, Mr. President and council members, you have a closed session